All right, welcome to another episode of the Lockdown Podcast, continuing to pick apart Raw, SmackDown, PLEs, which obviously is Crown Jewel Perth this go around. So before we start, we have an addition to the Lockdown Podcast, and Mr. Tom over here. How are we doing, Tom?
Just fantastic. Thanks for having me, bud.
So I think for the most part, we've been really talking about how repetitive Raw and SmackDown have been over the course of the last probably 3 to 4 months. And so we get once again Raw kicking off with Io Sky dealing with Asuka and Kairi Sane. Obviously ends up in uh, basically they were trying to clear the air between Io Sky and Kairi Sane and Asuka, and this was the basically the downfall of the whole thing, with Asuka spraying the poison mist into Io Sky, and like it was funny, and I don't know if you caught it, but like the camera panned away just a little bit late because you could see Asuka getting the capsule out of her pocket, and maybe like it was probably a oopsie because usually they try to like be a little bit more slick about when they, put the capsule in. Um, but yeah, that was just kind of funny, just because I'm like watching and I'm like, oh, whoops, you're about 2 seconds to the wrong camera. Um, but yeah, I am over this. Like, I'm glad that we're getting everything coming to a head. In regards to Kyrie Sane and Asuka and Io Sky, and now obviously Rhea Ripley. And I said last week, if they don't have Rhea on the card in her home country, it would be silly. And obviously we get her, so I'm excited for that being on the card, just because it's been a long storyline that should have some kind of definitive outcome versus some of these things like that have just gotten played out over weeks, and it's like there's really not any depth to the storyline. There's no like long-term story booking. It's just kind of repetitive. But at least with the Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Io Sky and Rhea Ripley, there's at least something there.
Mhm.
Um, so Dominic has honestly been better than I would have hoped in regards to being the Intercontinental Champion. Obviously, with outside interference help and stuff like that, which was no different in this case versus Rusev. But you gotta chalk it up to the fact that Dominic Mysterio is literally just the modern day Eddie Guerrero when it comes to tomfoolery in the ring. And you watch these matches, and it's just like, you got to know how to play the game.
Yeah.
And again, like I've said before, like me being positive and being nice about Dominic Mysterio has had me come a long way.
Mhm.
And so, I don't know exactly what or when Dominic will drop the title. I'm thinking sooner rather than later, when we actually have an actual straight up match without outside interference. Now, if I was fantasy booking some kind of like happening to a match, it would be like Finn Balor screwing over Dominic Mysterio. And I know we've talked like on and like for literally months in regards to, we feel like Finn Balor needs to leave. He can do better. He's way better singles than being this goofy in this group, and it feel like it's run its course. That would be like my thinking of the downfall of Judgment Day. Obviously they're the tag team champions right now, so that does throw a mild wrench. Um, so I feel like I don't think any of this stuff will happen on Judgment Day until they have no gold.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah,
uh,
the whole Day thing. I mean, I can't even believe still a thing. Really, it really reminds me of being more of an AEW guy in the last handful of years of the Dark Order once John died, right? And it just became really more of a comedy group. I think when you take all that seriousness out of it, and that's what I think the original three, Edge, Rhea Ripley, or four, right, with Balor and what's the other guy's name? I totally forgot.
Damian Priest.
Well,
Yeah, Priest.
yeah.
That was a much more serious group. And then you add in the Dominic Mysterios, and they did some fun things, but I think it's very much just shifted towards this not serious group that will definitely help and interfere in each other's matches and things like that. But when you look at them versus the top guys on the roster, there's not a credible threat. They tried with Priest, but now he's out too. I just don't get it. I don't get what they're trying to go with drawing this thing out. So I do think that Finn doing a big turn and honestly probably getting back up the mid card into these more credible matchups.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great for his character and to finally kind of put this Judgment Day thing behind us.
Yeah. Yeah, and he did so a couple weeks ago, Finn went back down to NXT. They had I forget which kind of a show it was, but it was kind of a specialty show or whatever. And Finn brought back the OG demon music and everything else, and it just he looked like he was way more in his element with that in that character of Finn Balor than he is now. And it's just it's almost like a joke. You can't take them seriously because yes, I know they have gold, and obviously Dominic is the IC plus a AAA some title or whatever, and that's fine, but it really has run its course. I mean, it was how long we had to deal with the bloodline, the OG bloodline with the Usos, Roman Reigns, and Solo, and how long that ran its course. But when they were holding the gold for so long, you're okay, yeah, that's fine. But the fact that they were holding every title, when when they unified the tag team championships and they basically were walking around with 4 belts, which was goofy in and of itself. And then obviously Roman having both titles and really not being a presence, basically PLEs he would be there for. But I guess at least Judgment Day is on regular programming, I guess.
Yeah.
Versus some of the other ones where they show up periodically. I mean, if you look at the Wyatt Six, where it's they're not really much around anymore, even though they're the champions. And I'm really hoping that this next Friday or this Friday on SmackDown that the Street Profits win back the titles, because the Judgment Day is not going to be something on regular television. It's more of a niche attraction than it is some true faction that's there every week, whether it's a backstage segment or it's matches. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that have basically been on repeat, and I'm ready for something different because what we've seen over the course of the last 4 months has been very mid at best. Even that main events are mid, so, but
yeah, I mean, I think you can obviously every year is pretty cyclical with WWE, right? They have their big 4 shows. And I think for the most part, if you look across, even the last 30 years, there's this weird doldrum area after SummerSlam, and Survivor Series used to be that big one that kept everyone coming around in November, right? But I just feel like they've gotten away from, really great Survivor Series shows. And obviously in January, Royal Rumble comes around, everyone's hyped. It's WrestleMania season. Like, the Royal Rumble's my favorite pay-per-view. I know it's a lot of people's favorite pay-per-view, outside of WrestleMania, depending on the year. But there's this weird area right now where it's like, okay, are our long-term plans working out? Do we have to make some changes? I'm sure they planned for Jey Uso to have a lot more this year at WrestleMania than he's doing right now. So there's some adjusting. Obviously, they made the flip with John Cena. We all know how that kind of worked out. So, yeah, with that, they're kind of putting the shine on John right now in his farewell tour. And really, I think they're just riding that horse to hope that he can carry them into the end of the year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's, they're rigging the chamois for all it's worth. But I mean, I will say honestly, I mean it, but like, you look at the handful of, wrestlers, since like 2000, that have really lifted the business, when you get that true face of the business. And so, like, I'm all for them, kind of letting John Cena do what John Cena do, on his farewell tour. And I truly think like this when he says he's done, he's done. Like, I don't think this isn't some like I'm gonna retire and then all of a sudden I'm back. Like, I think he'll still be an ambassador for WWE, but we're not gonna see him back in the ring. We won't see him show up at random shows. He will still work alongside WWE in some capacity, but he won't be in the ring. So I think we'll just, we can enjoy it, I mean, I've been watching wrestling since forever. So it's like, he's a, once in a 50-year generation wrestler, that has done a lot for the business, and obviously like the pre TKO era where, it was way different how they presented John Cena. And I think like John Cena, like he came back, as far as like those handful of times throughout like the last like 3 years here and there, and then when he finally, said, "Hey, this is going to be my last year," and I think, they're giving him what he wants on his way out, and then once he's done, he's done. So
Yeah.
but so again with the repetitiveness, so we get Raquel Rodriguez versus Bailey, and it's tricky that they're dealing with like they have this Bailey like with this split personality stuff, which seems to be a carbon copy of AJ Lee and her split personality stuff that she did, in years past. But it's like now you have two of the same gimmicks running parallel, and it's kind of weird. Um, But like we said with the AJ Lee stuff, she's here for this brief moment. I don't see her, continuing to be a part of the business. This was just a good storyline in a good, time for her to come back just because it worked for the storyline. But I don't know what they're doing with Bailey. Like I love Bailey, but like I am super confused on like what the trajectory is for Bailey. So
Yeah, it can be a little confusing watching what they're gonna do. The split personality. I don't think I want to see like this be a long term program for her. I would like for her to, you know, figure out what they're going to do and stick with that and hopefully put her in some type of championship picture at some particular point before WrestleMania season.
yeah, and it is tough when you're basically put in a story situation where it's like there's no real definitive direction to it.
Right.
It's just kind of there. and it kind of sucks because, like, you know, the Bailey 5-6 years ago was way better. Like when she had Damage Control, like that was the great return, you know, and it was exciting, and it was, you know, a new faction because there wasn't a whole lot of female factions. There are female tag teams, but there weren't really female factions. And
Right.
so like it was new and it was fresh, and then all of a sudden it just kind of fell off. You know, the group started getting bigger, and then Bailey gets pushed out of her own group. Like, you know, so it's like, what do you do at that point when you basically kind of, you're just lingering in the atmosphere, essentially getting pushed out of the group that you started. But so LA Knight has basically kind of, you know, he's being semi pushed. And by semi pushed, I mean like we're seeing him weekly. Now which storyline he decides to fumble himself into, that's a different story. And this is another one of the guys that's like, you know, he has the crowd in the palm of his hand, and WWE in typical fashion is fumbling. And so when you have someone of, you know, the megastar that, you know, is LA Knight, and you're not really doing anything with him, it's like, it's not his fault the WWE's creative is not so creative, you know. And I get it, we're on like, you know, the John Cena farewell stuff, and I get all that's going on, but it's like you still have people on the roster right now that are either A, in stupid storylines, or B, they're not in any storyline, and they just kind of do these dumb backstage segments or whatever. And so, like, you know, you have 2.5 hours to put product together, and we just, when we keep on recycling these same segments, these same wrestlers coming out and then having a match at the end of the night, or like it just constantly recycling these like match setups, and we are not surprised anymore. We're, you know, it's you basically look, so according to the people that were actually at Raw recently, is that WWE, they had 5,000 tickets left to sell, and we dogged AEW and their lack of viewership and lack of fans, but now because WWE is so money hungry, you're starting to now see the decline of a Raw and SmackDown, especially Raw on Netflix, and Netflix is kind of pissed about it too. And that, like, I've heard multiple things in regards to Netflix basically being really pissed off that they're putting out subpar shows. You know, it was like the same thing with WrestlePalooza. WrestlePalooza got a C rating. The only match they talked about was Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer. They didn't talk about anything else. And it's really sad that you are going to launch on this global stage that is ESPN. ESPN's got their hands in pretty much every sport. And so now WWE wants to join that list, and they completely flopped. And it's WWE Creative's fault 110%. So,
yeah, I think you know what it makes me think of, right? And I started watching wrestling in the early 2000s. You know, some would say like the greatest time to watch wrestling, right? And the formula there was, we have the weekly shows on TV. You know, they made some money from those, but the contracts weren't nearly as huge as they are now, right? They made all their money on pay-per-view. So every week was trying to get people to watch and set up that, you know, after 4 weeks, there's this big blow off with all these matches. And I think the great thing about the Attitude Era, sure, you had some awesome stars like Stone Cold and The Rock, and on the other side you had the Hulk Hogan's and the Goldbergs, and that was all a lot of fun, right? But you also had these shows that were bang, bang, bang. You know, you look at a lot of the matches, and if you're a match quality person, like, it probably wasn't your bag. You know, there's a lot better matches going on day in and day out on these shows now, athletically, but there were so many goofy, funny, different storylines. And we talked about it a little bit earlier with the Judgment Day stuff, but you do have to mix some of that in to have a really good show, right? Like
I
a
agree.
watchable show. Now we have 30-minute promo segments between Cody and Seth, like every other week. Like, you know, for a long time when they did the Authority thing, every Raw, Trips and Stephanie would come out and talk for 30 minutes. Like, I just
If
don't know what they're doing.
So
yeah,
I think it's a fallback to like the Vince McMahon era because it's safe until they can get out of this overcharging cycle. Yeah, Hunter will take some heat for that for creative, you know, but it's top down, you know. Hunter is probably, you know, considering maybe he's just as frustrated as other people because he wants to do these things, but it should be at like a big show. But you know what, I agree with the thought of let's turn it up a little bit, you know, or a lot. If people are going to be paying a lot of money for these tickets and for these WWE experiences, what they're trying to sell, which is, in my opinion, a lot of crap. Uh, you've got to turn it up. You've got to make it exciting for the people in the audience right there and not just phoning it in. You've got to really get the excitement level. Let's see some titles change hands on a Friday night SmackDown, like a world title, like tag team championships, like, you know, Cody loses his championship on a SmackDown. Let's see some really good stories going into Survivor Series season. Let's get something really special out of Perth that, you know, lasts a lot longer than just the PLE that they're pumping out. So they've got to turn it up if they're going to charge what they're charging for tickets.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is that, like, you know, that's like going to, let's say, like UFC, right? Like you're paying because you're going to get top caliber matches even on the prelims. But with WWE, you are getting, like you said, these safe matches, and the viewership is tanking. Like, there's less streaming of Raw on Netflix. There's less people going to Raw on Netflix. And, like, it's like the formula that Vince had. He wanted to create generational fans. And now we can't afford to. You know, I've, you know, like, I've taken my kids to a couple of, I think I took my daughter to a Raw, took my son to a Raw, took my son to SummerSlam. Like, you know, and it's like, you can't afford to now. And I
Yeah.
was looking at the Las Vegas, again, WrestleMania Take Two from Las Vegas, and the most expensive 2-day pass was over $13,000, and the cheapest for 2 days was $650, and that's in basically no man's land where you're watching ants wrestle.
Ooh, no, no,
And
no.
so like when me and Tim went to WrestleMania, I think we paid maybe like less than 200 for 2 nights. And, like, yeah, we were kind of up in the whatever section, but, like, you know, but that was only $200, like basically $200 each.
Yeah.
And obviously, like in Dallas where we've seen it, like, obviously you got the big screen, so you're basically, it's like you're watching it, but you're also experiencing it, you know. But it's like no casual fan that's like, oh my gosh, they're coming here. And I guarantee you, even at a Raw or SmackDown, I guarantee you the top tickets are still a grand plus.
Yeah.
And if you're getting subpar stories, subpar matches, I don't want to, like, if you want to do a small, like, 10-minute little thing in the ring, fine. But don't go more than that. Like, I came to see matches. I didn't come to hear you talk. And obviously, like, storylines are based off, obviously, of talking to a certain extent. But we want to see the matches. We want to see culminations of feuds. We want to see these, like, really banger matches. But now we're just getting these plateau, the safe matches. You know, how many times can we see Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker versus the Usos, or Jimmy and LA Knight, or whatever? Like, it's on both shows. It's like, so you're getting the same shit from one show to the next, because, apparently they've just done away with the brand split, because now everybody's just going wherever the hell they want.
I mean,
And
isn't that how it happens every time? Every time we
Yeah.
do this brand split, this huge draft, and then a year later, it's like, oh nope, he's coming over here. They're facing off against these guys because, like, it doesn't really make that much of a difference anymore. I mean, if you're going to make the brand split, the justification is that it's going to have more people see TV time. But at the end of the day, right now, it just turns into, and I love Cody Rhodes and John Cena, but it's just half of the show is talking about them and Seth Rollins and, just promo stuff. And we have 2-segment matches that probably don't need to be 2-segment matches. Like, let's try to fit some more short stuff in, get some squashes, like get some of these guys out that you're trying to make look good, and give some of these other guys a shot to be on TV too. I mean, you have so many people just standing around getting paid and not being on TV.
yeah.
And without the live shows, they don't do those anymore. So when are these people actually getting work in the ring? I'm sure they have the Performance Center, stuff like that. But, I think the product as a whole is they're trying to figure out what it looks like now, because it's not working like it has in the past.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, and like, and then we, again, we had the repetitive match of Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker versus the Usos in a tornado tag, which basically means there's no tag. So it's basically just a 2-on-2. But like, and then of course, like, we get the 1000th return of Roman Reigns, who is basically there for a crowd pop. And
got it.
if that's the extent of their like creative direction in them trying to, like, do something interesting, like, I love Roman Reigns. Like, don't get me wrong. I like, but it's like, he's just this pop up once in a while to help the Usos. And obviously, like, what happened recently, obviously, you had Roman basically, talking to Jay and basically essentially grooming him to be the next tribal chief. But then you have, like, Jimmy in the background, and he's just kind of like, he didn't get a bro hug. He didn't get any embrace from Roman Reigns. It was JJJ. And I feel like the thing that would interest me is what I've heard a lot about is Jey Uso going heel. Like, because you have him the whole, you have everybody loving him, but like, when you reach that peak of people loving you, when you turn heel, it is twice as good.
Yeah,
And
it does make it more interesting.
Exactly. It's more of a surprise. You're like, oh my gosh, he's not doing the yeets anymore. And he's like, he just completely turned. I mean, if you look at the caliber, when the best heel turn of ever in professional wrestling being in Hollywood, Hulk Hogan, like, the fans were pissed. And like, I want to have Jay come out and all of a sudden just beat the crap out of Jimmy or something, and have that heel turn and have him walk off and not give a crap. Like, that would surprise me. But like, what we're getting now is, again, it's all just super safe. It's and it's just kind of boring. And like, I don't know how you have these creative meetings with everyone in the room and no one speaks up and says, "Hey, what about this?"
I wouldn't be
know?
surprised if they do, and they have like even better ideas than what we are even throwing out, and they get shot down because there's just absolutely no way that all of the limited backstage uh, knowledge that we have, which is based solely on speculation. So it's not even really knowledge; it's just backstage speculation. Um, that they haven't thought about all these things, and it gets shot down for whatever reason, and we're sit here wondering, what could have been or what if. And I always think about it is, if we got everything that we wanted, would we continue to watch the product? They want and need lifelong viewers and supporters of the product, or it's not going to work for as long as it has. So,
Well, I mean, and like,
you
not in the
know,
sense of them giving us everything we want. It's just like, give us something that builds towards something the fans have been yammering about. It doesn't have to be all in one, like one big snowball effect where everything happens and we're all so happy, and then like everything else is kind of like, eh, you know,
well, well, just going back to what Tom said earlier, it's like, there's always there's this lull every season before Survivor Series, and we've spoken about it on the podcast before, that there's these ebbs and flows, in between like the major PLE shows, that we're gonna get these like low points. But from what I'm understanding, like, people are really frustrated with how many low points that we've gotten, and the ticket prices. Like, you're giving us subpar stories, and you are absolutely charging too much for tickets and the WWE experience. You can't do both. I mean, if
Mhm.
you're going to give us crap stories, then, you know, charge us crap rates,
yeah, I
not give us
mean,
crap stories and absolutely rob us at the same time. Now,
yeah.
now you're taking advantage of people.
And it all goes back, to the pre TKO. You know, Vince was a dirty old man. Let's call it like it is. But when it came to the business, you know, if he had people saying, "Well, we should do this," and he's like, "Well, no, I'm going to do this," and and the thing about Vince is that he was engulfed in the business for his whole life. And, much like, Stephanie McMahon and much like Shane McMahon, like these people have watched the product their whole life. And the one thing, that I can say about Vince is that there's these times where like there's something that happens, right? Like there was one where like the Miz came out as the Rock, right? And this one specifically is that like the Rock's music played, right? And and Miz goes to go out and Vince is like, "Hold on a second, just wait. Just wait a second." And then now go. And like you had that anticipation and then and like just like the mind of Vince McMahon, I feel like is just way better than anybody currently.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so, he viewed the business differently. And like, you think of all the matches that we've had, all the Hell in a Cells, the inauguration of the TLC match, like a lot of this stuff was from the mind of Vince McMahon. And so what we have now, like it's not as creative. and
It
and ma- you
started
know
off well, but it has not gone well. And I think if we were to look back, we could figure out when that change happened. And it was a few weeks after, I would say, Penta debuted. If we were
yeah.
to like look for a timeline, that things started to like, yo, why does this feel like, you know, it sucks now? But we can spend all day, trying to figure out and dissect,
Yeah.
what's going on. But, we've got Raw, and then now we got SmackDown. We've got Perth to get to.
Yeah. So SmackDown essentially kicks off with the thing that it does everywhere, where Cody Rhodes comes out and yammers away as he does. Really no surprise on that. And then obviously Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker come out with Paul Heyman. And, obviously Randy comes in to kind of thwart off the attack, essentially, that was basically the most predictable thing to happen. And you're starting to see the cracks where, like, it doesn't look like Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins like working together. And he seems like Paul seems to be more invested in Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed than he does Seth Rollins. And I don't know what the disconnect is. I don't know, like, if there's just backstage politics, then they're just kind of like they're just not agreeing on things or what. But like they don't look like a cohesive group, like the Vision. Like it's kind of Paul Heyman and Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and then Seth Rollins just kind of comes out periodically.
No, I think it was, I believe it happened just because of when it happened and who was around, right? I'm sure Paul Heyman pushed for Braun and the other guy. Sorry,
Bronson
yeah,
Reed.
Bronson Reed. Those look like Paul Heyman guys. Those feel like Paul Heyman guys. And Seth Rollins really doesn't. But they're like, oh, well, we have this triple threat at WrestleMania. What if we make this? Well, will Paul Heyman do this? Won't Paul Heyman do that? And then he does it, and then he does something else way different, right? And I think it was kind of a cool finish, but I think that was the thought of it. They're like, okay, well, we need a main guy with this idea Paul has. Let's put Seth in there, even though it doesn't fit. They don't gel together, and I think that's what we're seeing in the booking, right? It's basically Reed and Braun Breaker as a tag team wrecking people, and then Seth's still out here with his wacky uniforms. Now his wife's around in a completely different character than she was when everyone loved her. Now it's just her character is just really whiny, and she wants to be a bad guy, but that's not working for me. Yeah, it's just like it just doesn't work for me, And even and Seth Rollins is a great athlete, but sometimes, like, I just don't know if he has that ability for the fans to really either love him or hate him. Right? Yeah. He's just always kind of that. He's the same guy.
Yeah, and it's rather, and that's the thing is too, is if you look at all of his, like the Monday Night Messiah stuff, or basically going back to, he was just Seth Rollins, and then he was Seth freaking Rollins, and then that went away, and then now he's back to being Seth freaking Rollins. But it's like you have like overlapping stories with like the Vision stuff, and then you have the Seth and Becky Lynch stuff, and it's like they're like battling for relevant storylines, because it's like, we had that match, with Seth and Becky versus CM Punk and AJ Lee, but now essentially that's run its course, and that was quick, and it came and went like, like a rainbow, like after a rainstorm, like it came and went, and now there's nothing there. So now it's like Becky is lost because she doesn't have anything to do. And so you look at, her continued promos that are just on repeat about, I said I'm the greatest, ESPN said I'm the greatest, Sports Illustrated, like, and then like she just runs back the same promo every time. And like, and now you're having matches with Maxine Dupree. Wow. Like, like, it's become, you've become filler now. And like the women's secondary titles in and of themselves have become very, very like non-existent. And when they brought them in, I'm like, okay, they're going to amplify this. They're going to start, doing this weekly stuff where they're defending their title or whatever else, because that's what we got back in the 90s. It didn't. PLEs really didn't matter. PLEs were more or less culmination matches, and that's all they ever were, because people were losing matches for titles, whether it was the World Heavyweight, the Undisputed, the Intercontinental, the United States tag teams. They were losing them on Raw and SmackDown, and that's just how it was. And that's why, like, John Cena has so many titles. You know, he has 17 because he won and lost on Raws and SmackDowns. It wasn't just the let's hold the title and defend it 4 times a year. Like, you were defending it anytime, anywhere. And now we've gotten to the point where we have this Roman Reigns treatment of champions where they show up periodically to defend their title and then they go away. And that's why, like, I love what Sami Zayn's doing. Sami Zayn right now, for me, is the best thing on WWE programming, because he's bringing back the open challenge. He's putting on great matches, you know, giving opportunities to about anybody, like, especially like Javon Evans, who just, you know, is a rising star in NXT. He has a great match with Aleister Black. Like, he's starting to become the focal point of the actual product being good. And everything else is just the same stories over and over again. And I wish that there would be more defenses for titles on regular programming. Because what is that? Because, again, those ticket prices are like PLE level ticket prices for just going to a Raw or SmackDown. So give me something worth my investment to be here, because it is about us. We're paying your bills because we're buying merch. We're going to shows. We're forking out all this money. And so give me what I paid for. And they're not. And their stuff, like, they're going to be real sad when WrestleMania Las Vegas is a flop. Like, they're not selling out. They are gonna. I would just my prediction, they will be at least 5,000 to 10,000 under proposed ticket sales. Because if Raw on Netflix is already showing that, SmackDown is already showing that, no one's gonna be like, oh man, I'm gonna go spend $1,000 for a nosebleed section at WrestleMania. And if the only time you're giving me good product is for when I fork out my savings account, that's absolute bullshit.
It
like
is.
You know,
well, here's their attitude is you're gonna go anyway. You're gonna watch anyway. And that's kind of what the attitude was like towards the end of this Vince McMahon era, right? Like, well, I'm just gonna put on what I like and what I want, because you guys are going to watch anyway, especially before AEW, you know, in that window, there are a couple times when TNA became a relevant contender, right? And they were putting on some good stuff. But without the competition, Vince just kind of did what he liked. And then that has transformed to, all right, well, there are these lulls and people are going to watch anyway. But as we talked earlier, I think we're going to start seeing people drop off. And especially when you're spreading things across all these streaming packages, I think they totally devalued what the Vault had on the WWE network. I thought that, I mean, sure, the PLAs being free with your subscription, that's awesome. But what I liked is being able to go back and watch all the old shows. Royal Rumble time comes around, boom, I'm going to watch all the Royal Rumbles leading up to the Royal Rumble, right? Like, doing stuff like that. And now that they're like, oh, well, Raw's going to be on Netflix, SmackDown's going to be on Fox, all our PLEs are going to be on ESPN or whatever they're doing. Do we even know? Is the Vault just going to stay on Peacock? Has it already left? I don't even know. But you're looking at, okay, rather than spending $9.99 a month back when the WWE Network came out, now you got to pay $15 for Netflix, whatever it is
Mhm.
for ESPN.
March 18th, 2026 is when it's supposed to go away.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
a shame. Like,
Yeah.
because that's where a lot of the money is. And that's what Vince saw when he bought WCW anyway. Like all of that old footage, all of that stuff, like it's a shame. I hope it lands somewhere and I hope it's available somewhere, but I can only imagine that it'll be just behind another price wall or two.
Yeah. And and that's the thing too, is it's like, you know, you love to live in a little bit of nostalgia sometimes, right? Like, you know, like I love, because on, you know, Peacock has up, I guess right now, maybe, I don't know, but like, you know, when they do like these segments and like these documentaries of like rivalries and stuff like that, and you know, and like you said, I don't want to get stuck behind another subscription. And I mean, even now, what I pay the top notch for Netflix, right? And what's pissing me off is that now, even with my top tier thing, I still get fucking commercials. And before it was like it would pan out for like 3 minutes. I put a little
Mhm.
timer in the corner, and it would be a countdown. And so like I'm getting this bonus footage for 3 minutes, or I'm getting these in between like segments, like where it'd be commercials for you guys, or doing like a segment up in the corner of the arena doing these interviews and stuff like that. But now I don't even get that, and I'm paying top notch for Netflix. And it's
Yeah.
like, what? Like, it's crazy to me is that WWE was fine
Mhm.
pre Triple H, TKO, Vince McMahon era, because he knew that 9.99, if more people buy 9.99, it is better than putting it at 30 and having less people buy it. Because if you have 20 million people subscribed to a 9.99 subscription, they're going to start seeing how good it is, and they're going to tell their friends. And you're going to create new fans. You know, much like, you know, when I drive Lyft and Uber and stuff like that, and I purposely put the Lockdown Podcast hat up there, and like I'll just talk wrestling to freaking anybody that will listen. And so like I've tried my best, and I've talked to them like about like, you know, investing in, you know, this, you know, WWE. But it's like if they're a fan that hasn't watched in 20 years, and then they watch like a couple weeks of it, they're gonna be like, yeah, no, I'm good. And that's unfortunate. That I'm still excited about WWE. I will, you know, I wouldn't be doing a podcast about it if I didn't. But it's just like I feel bad for the trying to create generational fans, because you can't, when like you're even disinterested in it. I'm gonna watch it, like you said, we're gonna watch it, but like to get my kids invested in it, nah. My kids like a couple characters, you know, but other than that, like my kids don't watch WWE with me. Like, and so it's like, how far down the road are we going to have so much drop off in fan base that we're going to be doing WrestleMania in a 30 to 40,000 stadium versus a 70 to 80? And you're going to, and I honestly feel like let's just longevity. Let's say 5 years. Let's say five more WrestleManias beyond this one next year. So in 2031, where are they going to have it? Because they're going to be like, here's the ticket prices, here's the venue, and people are going to be like, I just can't afford it. And
Yeah.
I love WWE, but I just can't afford it. And people are just going to sit at home and watch it, and not go to the shows. They're not gonna go to the venue and buy merch to wear that, to like right at the show. They're not gonna buy belts. They're not gonna, like, all this stuff is gonna take a decline eventually to the point where they're like, man, we fucked up. Because there's gonna be a breaking point. And I feel like it's going to happen sooner rather than later because it's already happening.
Yeah.
And, when they're trying to get out of, they're doing all this to basically get out of debt with, the TKO stuff. Why the hell did you ever do anything with TKO? The product was fine. And
We can politic on that and talk about that till like the cows come home. Like, why do they do this? Do this deal in hindsight? I mean, the deal is only like maybe 2 years old. We don't know what the future will hold. Like, we don't know what the pricing will be in 5 years, but we can only suspect that they're not going to lower the prices because they're training and teaching people that this is the new norm. This is the new normal, and you're going to accept it or you're not going to watch it. But what they're going to do, like I think like we're all alluding to, is that they are going to price out their long-term fan base, and the product is going to be completely different than what it is today. And it doesn't help that they are not, that the WWE machine is not being very creative. They're really phoning it in right now, and which is unfortunate because they've got 3 companies worth of professional wrestlers that could have 3 companies doing extremely well if they were just to like split each brand.
Yeah.
So,
and it's I mean, and you're starting to get this like crossover. So WWE basically, so TKO is basically the top of the skyscraper, followed by WWE, followed by NXT, followed by TNA, followed by AAA. And so you have a unique opportunity, to create some very, very memorable matches just because you have so much depth of talent. You have generational talent, across all those brands. And then they're starting to do it now more like they have the NXT showcase basically having a Survivor Series-esque thing between TNA and NXT. And I think that's great. But like what we've gotten of Survivor Series for the past 3-4 years has been the War Games mentality. But like there's, because of the lack of a brand split, like, Survivor Series used to be about brand supremacy. You had the Raw or SmackDown show up in the other show and cause a bunch of ruckus, and it just amplified the story. It amplified Survivor Series. It amplified, your champion versus our champion, and your Intercontinental versus United States, and you had all this cool build to Survivor Series, and now Survivor Series has basically become, well, these 5 guys don't like these 5 guys, or these 5 girls don't like these 5 girls, and that's all it is now. And it doesn't I mean, you think of all the cool PLEs they've had, from like 90 to like 2010, all the fun PLEs and everything, and the better storyline builds to matches. And now it's like we're just getting like spoon-fed, matches that already happen on a Raw or SmackDown, and then they put them on a PLE too, and you're like, I mean, PLEs are supposed to be special. They're supposed to be like a culmination type of setup, and now they're just basically just spoon-fitting us things that could be on Raw or SmackDown.
Well, here's one thing that I don't like is how all the match types became PLEs, right? Like, look at all the ones we had. We got Elimination Chamber, Hell in a Cell, TLC. Well, now it's Money in the Bank, right? Like, all of these matches, Elimination. I think I already said Elimination Chamber, but all these matches like become whole pay-per-views now. Like, I liked it when Money in the Bank was a match at WrestleMania, right? And I liked it when, the Elimination Chamber, came up once a year, not at the same time, whatever. I guess it kind of fits in where they have it now to kind of add to whoever doesn't win the Royal Rumble. I guess that fits. But at the same time, when you watch a PLE, you're not going to get a Hell in a Cell because it's not at Hell in a Cell, right? Like, you're not going to get any of those cool matches that make sense to toss them in there in storylines, but
yeah, I mean it's like you have these match types, and now, like you said, they're just on the PLE that it's named after. But it's like there's been times where it's been a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and there's only been one Hell in a Cell match. You go back into the archives, Hell in a Cell matches were just a culmination match. It didn't matter if it was on a PLE. It'd be, Undertaker versus Mick Foley was literally on. It was like a King of the Ring thing. It wasn't anything that was labeled after that, And it's like you have the TLC PLEs that you used to have, where it's like one match is tables, one match is chairs, one match is ladders, and like they could do these on regular programming and give people something to remember at the show they paid for. If we like when SmackDown was here, and you had that John Cena basically rehashing the pipe bomb from CM Punk, right? Like, that was something exciting and memorable. Like, now every Raw and SmackDown is just a safe show. It's not memorable. It's more forgettable than memorable. And I think if you want to create long-term fans, you need to let these 12,000 people got to share in this moment, and it was awesome. It was exciting. People were posting about it, and they're telling their friends, and they're like, "Man, you got to get into WWE, man. They have this great segment I went to, and it was awesome." And that's how you create more fans. But like, it's right now, it's very flat. So Crown Jewel as it is right now, we did have one match added, but we're still looking for, I would say, at least one or two. I would think that 6 for Crown Jewel would be a decent match number, but when we have the Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins for the Crown Jewel Championship, Tiffany Stratton versus Stephanie Vaquer for the Crown Jewel Championship. We have John Cena versus AJ Styles, and then Rhea Ripley and Io Sky versus Asuka and Kairi Sane. And those are okay matches. I wouldn't spend a bunch of money for it.
Yeah.
Like,
I would say the Vancouver Stratton match could be a barn burner, and Kabuki Warriors versus Rhea and Io Sky. I think that could be good. John Cena and versus AJ Styles. That's going to be a classic match. I mean, I don't sleep on that one. Just because they're both going out. I think that'll be a really classic match. And I think AJ Styles will probably pull out, a couple of old school TNA moves if he's been practicing. So I wouldn't sleep on that. The Cody Rhodes Seth Rollins match. I would not be surprised if Seth Rollins wins that match, because Cody won the inaugural Crown Jewel Men's Championship belt. So I wouldn't be surprised. However, it could go the other way. Cody does have Seth Rollins' numbers when it comes to PLEs. So yeah. Yep. So you know what? All the of the 4 matches they have, the Cody Rhodes Seth Rollins match, you can definitely take a bathroom break and watch the last 5 minutes of it and be fine. I mean,
that's the measuring stick of if you're bored with the match. Like, I gotta go to the bathroom. but as Tim would say, I'm gonna go take a crap. So,
but yeah, I think when you're looking at, and as I was talking about, like, match cards 20 years ago, right, look a little bit different. I mean, if we would have gotten a pay-per-view that had 5 or 6 matches, we'd be like, what are they going to do with all the other time? Because matches were only going like 10, 15, even the main event sometimes. Every now and then they might have one go half an hour, on like WrestleMania, or if it was Triple H got to get his time.
Yeah.
But I think we're going a bit extreme towards the long matches mean good matches when sometimes we can get away with, like, if you're just going to end it in a flubbagool, like a whatever,
a roll
like,
up.
yeah, why are we taking 30 minutes to get there? Like, it has nothing to do with the storytelling of like, oh, these guys are working super hard and they're tired and exhausted, and one was able to, outduel the other.
And we've talked a lot about the overdoing of finishers. And I know Frederick specifically, has been very outspoken about that. And I agree 100% because I understand the secondary finishers not happening, and that's fine because they're secondary, but it's like when your finisher doesn't mean shit and you have to hit like 5 of them, because it's like you look at there was legitimately, I could probably count on one hand how many times someone's finisher was a true finisher, right? Like you look at like the tombstone, you look at the stunner, you look at the choke slam or the last ride, and you can, and you like even honestly the RKO, rarely ever. And so, but it's just like everyone, and they really watered down their finishers too. Like it blows my mind that you can do a superplex and that doesn't finish you, but like Bailey's rose plant does something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, like the efficacy of a finisher has changed so much. And one, I blame indie wrestling. Two, I blame the internet wrestling community. So it's not that a DDT is still not a finisher, but a DDT is a finisher. And if you get hit with a DDT, it should be a finisher. It doesn't have to be a future shock DDT. But a belly to back suplex, unless if it's not coming from someone like a Tavion Heights or a Braun Breaker, if he happened to break out his dad's belly to back suplex or belly to belly suplex, that's just a transitional move, just like the Canadian Destroyer. That was supposed to be a transitional move to get you from one spot to the other. And now they're just throwing it around like, it's candy, like, no.
It's the same thing with the super kick. I mean, the sweet chin music was awesome. Now it's become casual. And the crazy thing is that you look at, let's say, beyond DDP doing the diamond cutter, right? You think of how many times everybody has done a rendition of that. Matt Hardy did the Twist of Fate, basically a diamond cutter. The RKO is essentially a different version of the diamond cutter. You look at the Dudley Death Drop, that is basically a person lifted up into a diamond cutter. Now when people jazz them up, now I have to speak on Sol Ruka because how she does hers is amazing. She's jumping off the rope, doing a backflip into basically what is called the Soul Snatcher. And now when you modify them to make them super cool, then it's a good homage. But like when it just becomes part of your basic move set,
Yeah.
But I mean, like I think it truly is tough though, just because the repertoire of wrestlers nowadays are like, there's the playbook is deeper, right? You go back into the 70s and 80s, like you said, a DDT was a finisher, and you look at how matches went way back. because they didn't have the athleticism, they didn't have the basically archive move sets. And so, it's the finishers, like people's finishers, like there's only probably 10 finishers that don't suck.
And I think they don't suck because of the exclusivity. So WWE obviously has a certain way that they, teach their performers for longevity to not get hurt. When you're not in a machine like that, that's still like, anything goes. You're just a gritty, tough person doing these moves. They suck. They hurt. You're landing on plywood, or solid wood. It just depends. So I still stand by my statement of, indie wrestling plus the internet wrestling community equals why a lot of moves that should be finishers are watered down. And it doesn't help that WWE will not allow certain moves. It's probably a good idea for some moves not to be used, but it's also, we need to see like more innovation and more finishers actually being a finisher. Look, a Crossroads will do you. Now if you're like, an unstoppable character like Roman Reigns or like Brock Lesnar, hell, even I'll even say like, an Obafemi or, a Braun Breaker, those types of, whether they're trying to make them seem like unstoppable people, then yeah, use your finisher 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But like a simple belly to back should not be a finisher. Give me something that I can believe in. Allow me to suspend my disbelief for that moment to get the enjoyment that you're trying very hard to sell me. So yeah, I want to see more finishers being finishers, and I want to see the athletes take care of themselves and each other in the ring, but I also wanted them to wow me. Like, I don't need to see a Sol Ruka Soul Snatcher as a finisher for every match. Pull that out when you're going up against someone like or Jordan Grace, you know what I'm saying? Or you're going up against someone like, Raquel Rodriguez, someone that needs that finisher. Otherwise, give me something that's believable.
Yeah, I mean, and well, that's the thing is, I mean, it's to the point where these finishers, they're not truly believable. And now, like certain ones where like tag teams use, they're more believable because there's more going on, right? You look at, the Dudley Death Drop where there's two of them doing it, and the person's laying flat, so their head's hitting down on it. Same thing with the Usos basically giving homage to that in the 1D. And, some of them, but it's like, then you look at some of these other like other like tag team finishers and you're like, like that's the problem with the repertoire of movesets, is that not everything is believable.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, like, there's nothing you can do about it. It's unfortunate, that, some people's basic moveset is also someone's finisher. But, it is what it is. But we'll put a pin in this, and we will hopefully, be back next week to continue to pick apart things. We'll definitely be talking about Crown Jewel Perth, and I feel like we should go match by match and give our own personal grade. Like, I don't want to look at someone else. I don't want to look at someone else's what they thought. Like, I feel like we all need to be and seriously grade it, and maybe give match of the night. Maybe, I don't know. We'll dive into it. But this is the Lockdown Podcast. Peace.